All right, let's get into the story of a movement that, on the surface, looked like a total failure. But as we'll see, it ended up completely changing the course of a nation's history. It really shows us that sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you win, but the ones that teach you how to win the war. So let's start with a bit of a puzzle. A piece of music that kind of holds the key to understanding the deep cultural shockwaves this movement sent out. And believe me, the answer isn't just a fun fact, it's a direct line back to this incredibly powerful moment in time. And there it is. The journey of this one song, from a protest anthem to a national anthem over half a century later, is the perfect way to dive into the Swadeshi movement. We're talking about an absolutely explosive period of self-reliance in India that didn't just change politics, it reshaped a nation's very identity. Okay, so what was this movement really all about? Well, at its heart, it was about one simple, powerful idea: Swadeshi. It was a defiant answer to colonial economic control. And it was an answer that came from within. This idea of Swadeshi, using what is of one's own country, it wasn't just some catchy slogan. No, it was a call to arms. And it sparked this massive, almost overnight wave of homegrown entrepreneurship. I mean, just look at the sheer diversity of businesses that popped up. It was a genuine mushrooming of enterprise. Everything from textile mills to banks, all of it driven by this nationalistic fire to build an Indian-owned economy from the ground up. But here's the thing. Passion alone doesn't guarantee success, right? There was this constant tension between all that patriotic zeal and the nuts and bolts skills you actually need to run a business. So yeah, a lot of these new companies failed. But some, like PC Ray's Bengal Chemicals, totally thrived and became famous. They proved that self-reliance was way more than just a dream. And this economic energy didn't just stop with business. You could argue that the movement's most lasting impact was actually in the cultural sphere. This is where Swadeshi went from being an economic strategy to becoming the very soul of a generation. The sheer scale of this awakening was just incredible. You had Rabindranath Tagore's music, a totally new Indian art style from people like Abananand Ratzagar, and pioneering scientific research from figures like Jagadish Chandra Bose. It was a moment where the nation wasn't just making its own stuff, it was rediscovering its own voice. So, with all this economic and cultural energy swirling around, it was only a matter of time before it spilled into politics. And for the first time, nationalism wasn't just for the educated elite anymore. It became a genuine mass movement, pulling in entirely new groups of people on a massive scale. And just look at who was getting involved. Students were out on the streets, women were leaving their homes to join public processions, and the working class was organizing huge strikes. This was a fundamental shift, really the very beginning of true mass politics in India's struggle for independence. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? Despite all this incredible energy and its massive reach, the movement had some critical weaknesses. And we're not talking about small cracks. These were deep fractures in its foundation that its opponents were more than happy to exploit. You can kind of see the problem right here. While the movement did a great job mobilizing landlords, the middle class, and students, it really struggled to connect with a huge part of the population, the mass of Muslim peasants, particularly in Bengal. And this turned out to be its Achilles heel. And this is where it gets cynical. The British government consciously took advantage of this existing class division. See, in many parts of Bengal, the landlords were mostly Hindu, and the tenant farmers were mostly Muslim. So they took this economic tension and skillfully twisted it into a communal one. So this split wasn't an accident. It was actively widened by a deliberate divide and rule strategy. The government actually encouraged the formation of the Muslim League and propped up local leaders who opposed the Swadeshi movement. They were basically pouring fuel on the fire to weaken the nationalist front, a tactic whose consequences would echo for decades. So you've got these internal weaknesses. And then you add immense external pressure from the government, and, well, the movement began to collapse. And it happened surprisingly fast. What had burned so brightly started to fade out. I mean, things fell apart with shocking speed. A brutal police crackdown here, a major split inside the Congress Party there, and then the systematic arrest and deportation of its entire leadership. In just 2 years, the movement was effectively decapitated. By the middle of 1908, it was basically over. You had severe repression, a total leadership vacuum, and frankly, the simple fact that you can't keep a mass movement going at that fever pitch forever. To anyone watching at the time, it looked like a complete and utter failure. But was it really a failure? This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Was all that energy, all that sacrifice, all for nothing? After watching it collapse so dramatically, it's the obvious question to ask, right? The leaders were in jail, the businesses were struggling, the momentum was gone. The real answer? Not even close. Its legacy was infinitely more powerful than its immediate outcome. The movement's true value wasn't in what it achieved in 1908, but in what it made possible for the future. This right here is the true inheritance. It took nationalism from being an idea for elites and made it something for the masses. It left behind this incredible cultural legacy. And most crucially, it developed the playbook, passive resistance, non-cooperation, boycott, that Mahatma Gandhi would later perfect to lead India to independence. You gotta see it as round one. The Swadeshi movement was the first time the nation truly mobilized on a mass scale. It was the opening battle in a much, much longer fight for freedom. And that's the key takeaway. It wasn't the final victory, but as the philosopher Gramsci might put it, it was a crucial, transformative battle in the war of position. It changed the entire playing field, it taught invaluable lessons, and it made the eventual victory possible. A triumph hidden inside a failure.